Welcome to Dark Sorcery. I'm Alfredo Martinez, and I have with me the one and only Michael Hyson. Michael Hyson, how have you been?
Doing pretty good. Yourself?
I've been doing good as well. It's good to have you back here and be speaking with you. So for those of you who may not be too familiar with Michael Hyson, very well-read, very experienced practitioner of the occult, necromancer. In fact, we are going to be focusing on necromancy in this discussion, which will be the primary concern here. But first of all, Michael, let's go ahead and start out. Where did your magical journey begin? Where did you begin in the occult and then eventually got to where you are now?
I started out when I was 11. I started out in Gothic witchcraft, sorcery, before getting into actual witchcraft, getting into demonolatry and Satanism. And I've been a traditional Satanist for about 30 years. So I went from spiritual to theistic to traditional. After that, it was just expanding my horizons to where I'm at today.
Now, a lot of people tend to be raised in a religious home, and they kind of aren't introduced to the occult at maybe such a young age. So that was pretty much freelance in your home growing up, to where you could just pretty much read what you desired to.
Yeah, my mother, I grew up in foster care, so it was one of those homes. My mother believed in the JCI, but she didn't really care what I studied as long as it made me happy. If I connected to it, I was happy. That's all that mattered to her. So she gave me that room to grow within me, not forcing anything.
That's good. That's good. Because a lot of people. It's interesting because a lot of people are forced with religion, and so sometimes people just go to the occult as rebellion.
Yep.
And then they get out of that stage. But with you never, it's just a genuine interest embedded in you, which is
correct.
Something unique. I like that.
It was just, I've always been, since I was little, it was just, I connected to it. It's what fascinated me. It was what interested me. And, I just got into it when I was 11 and just kept on going.
Great. Now, in necromancy, you speak of two different kinds of necromancy, reanimation and conjuration.
Yeah.
Now, can you go ahead and differentiate between the two?
Okay. One of the more commonly known aspects is conjuration. This is done through divination. It is done through, say, for example, the black scrying mirror, pendulums, spirit bottles, nagungas, things that would allow you to conjure spirits, be it the demonic, the demerge, be it the Loa, the Orisha, the Jinn, whatever spirits you're trying to contact. It's a method that is used to bring them forth into full manifestation. This is spoken of by many occult authors, ranging from the last 300 years. However, one of the lesser commonly discussed aspects is reanimation. Reanimation is where you bring a soul back to either its original body or to another body for divination tools, for speaking of past, present, future, or any other inquiry. So there's a huge difference from working in you say, for example, your altar room, where you're working with just your basic altar tools, compared to that of working with an actual corpse. And when I say corpse, I'm referring to the Greek necromantic aspects, not the Roman or the Nicaea aspect.
I think that's interesting that you mentioned taking somebody's soul and either putting it back into a corpse or putting it into another body, which you don't really hear too much about that in occult studies. You may read about it here and there, but it's very rare. It is, but it is possible.
Yeah.
You know, if you study the occult, you know, long enough, you'll come to that conclusion, which is a shock to a lot of people, but it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Now, does that tie in anywhere to the stereotype of zombies? Where do you think the stereotype of zombies come and the connection with necromancy is?
Well, there's a lot of myths and legends throughout the world. In Haitian Voodoo, there's powders that will kill you, and then another powder that will be bringing you back. It's basically bringing you to a state of control. There are drugs that are forbidden that allow you to do so. But when it comes to the zombie mythos, anything to do with the undead, the death and apotheosis thereof, there are different formats of this. For an example, in necromancy, the zombie myth is basically bringing yourself closer to it, being that undead fiend. Okay, this is used with, like I said, powders, oleums, oils, things that allow you to become dead. There's an old expression that states that you have a target on your back. Okay, basically, the Reaper's coming for you with your number. So you either become undead, which is like a vampire or a zombie,
Mhm.
or you go all out in full combat.
Mhm.
Now, a necromancer would rather become undead, become communing with the dead. And when you get into the German or the Russian aspects of the word lich or glich, this means corpse, cadaver, okay, which is more modern day translations for English. There's, how should I say this, the means of transversing the worldly plane and becoming that immortal, that fiend. If you look at what a necromancer is capable of, you're able to go from corpse to corpse, become, rebirth. Basically, you're basically going from one body. When your body fails, you're able to go into another. The zombie aspect is, in most pop culture, something that can be used to either target an enemy and or has no will or mind or whatever of its own. The zombie, however, is something that you can employ as an egregora, but it is also something that you can become like. Haitian Voodoo is a completely different system, as you well know. But if you get into, let's say, for an example, the different fiends that are similar to the zombie, you have the golem, Jewish mythology. This is where the individual golem has a mind, a will, and can make choices. A zombie cannot. Okay, and there's a distinct classification here where one has free will, the other one doesn't. The ghoul, another fiend, eats flesh, human flesh, animal flesh, drinks the blood. Okay, even the bone marrow. The reaver, the revenant, the vampire, these are all symbolic of death. The zombie is that classification of perfect death, of standing perfectly still in time.
So would you say, I'm sorry,
Yeah, go for it.
would you say that the stereotype of the zombie coming to life and then going after somebody, usually that's some sort of spell that's been placed on the body, where when it is to be awakened or called forth, can go after its target? Would you say that's an accurate explanation?
Yes,
Okay,
it is an accurate explanation. Normally, you see in the old days, the old sages and mages, they used let's call it a tool that is used for controlling spirits, okay, or beings. If we go into Egyptian magic, say the Green Emerald or the Egyptian Book of the Dead, you see where hieroglyphs are put into a corpse, either shoved down the throat and the other one is kept on the practitioner. This creates the effigy, the bond, the link between the sorcerer and that Grigori. Okay, in this case, we're talking zombie. This allows the practitioner to control that being as an agent, a tool. This would be the classification of, say, modern pop culture. If we look at, say, let's go back to a favorite 90s pop show, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I believe it was season 3, if I remember correctly. You go into more modern day movies of zombies apocalypse or whatever, they just see them out killing. Two different viewpoints of what a zombie is. However, when you get into an actual practice and study of them, a zombie is just a tool. You can use things like a scepter, for an example. If you've seen my videos, you've probably seen mine in my videos. Yeah. I'm going to thank my brother from Shetland for that one. He made that one for me. He's actually a very good creator in that area. So, and or you're using anathema, some form of tool for divinatory action. In this case, look at the skull, skeleton. Same exact thing. You're using it in the same manner. You're using seals, sigils, you're using agents of death, and you're working with the spirits in conjunction with working with these spirits to bring a zombie to life.
So you're saying that these a lot of these movies where skeletons come alive and go after a target, there actually is truth to that.
There's partial truth, yes.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a lot of things wrong, but you got to remember that when it comes to Hollywood, they're looking at what sells.
What sells, right?
They mix fact with fiction, and they just go with it. They don't actually do their work. And if you look at, say, a show that recently went off the air, and from what I understand, it has a spinoff, is Supernatural. They actually hit the target on a lot of the supernatural and spiritual beings that we work with.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done a complete history of it, which I like.
Let me ask you this: I'm a fan of the Child's Play series, Chucky, and
yep.
And, if you go back to the very, very first movie, that has a lot of symbology of what we're discussing right now. You know, where the criminal, the killer, is about to die and he knows, but at the same time he's been taught necromantic rites, and so he transfers his soul via incantation to the doll. And through the help of Damballa, Maloa, this is able to happen. And then as long as the longer he stays.
He also used the Vivi.
I'm sorry?
For that. He used the Vivi for that.
Oh, excuse me. Right. Now, and then the longer he stayed in the body of the doll, the more human the doll became, and the body and soul merged. Now, how accurate is that movie? Say?
It's actually pretty accurate. When you look at how the transmortification process works, the transference of energy or in this case the soul, the human soul, you're basically taking a soul from one subject. Let's say, for example, you're taking it from a person. Let's say, I don't know. Let's go with the biggest name out there right now. Let's go with, say, Bin Laden. No, not Bin Laden. Let's go with Biden. Okay. You take his soul and you place it into a doll. Let's say a Cabbage Patch doll. Okay. This is done through a transference process. Everything I've studied, everything I've read on this aspect shows that the transference is a link that you place using symbolic meanings. I'm talking the VVs. I'm talking the say, for an example, the circle of evocation, the triangle of evocation. You're looking at the empowering of the rituals, the incense, the ritualistic ceremony behind it. And you're transferring that consciousness, that soul, the ka, if you will, into that doll. So once you link that soul to that effigy, in this case a doll, you are empowering it with the full embodiment of that spirit, connecting it with a seal. Okay. And so in this case, the Chucky version of this was actually quite accurate. So
yeah, that's very, very interesting. Now, you had noted before that when conjuring the dead, that it can be it can be useful to wear clothing that they died in. Yeah, could you go ahead and expand on that?
all right. When a necromancer or somebody becomes a necromancer, they tend to learn a lot. They delve into different mythologies and everything, learning how to perform the rites and rituals, what is needed. And a lot of times you're looking at necromancers sleeping in coffins with the corpses. You're looking at them dressing up as their loved ones, or the victim, namely putting on their clothes, the article of clothing. I mean, if you look at the video game Hitman, for example, what does he do after he kills the person? Puts on their clothes, right? Well, this is something that you can actually do. This includes jewelry, okay? This includes clothing. This includes their bones, their skeletal remains, items that they were close to that have their essence on it. It allows you to make a much more clearer connection with them. And when you're summoning them, that connection is strengthened, so you're not going to get, like, say, a demon, or, say, for example, an enemy agent, like, say, an angel or something. You're going for that one particular spirit that you're calling forth. So if you have a photo of them, if you have clothing, bones, a lock of hair, fingernail clippings, these are all items that you can use to conjure these spirits, or the type of spirit that you want to work with.
Okay. All right. Now, I had heard you mention a certain book before that I'm familiar with and I really love. Let me just grab it really quick. All right. So, Witch's Book of the Dead, Christian. Very, very good book. And I understand you've read it as well. In chapter, I believe it's chapter 3, he speaks of the skull, and there's a process where he speaks of where you grab the skull and you stare at it and start staring into its eyes, and eventually you start feeling this energy and doing this rhythmic breathing and create some sort of a link to it. Could you go ahead and explain that a little more, that process?
Basically, when you take a skull, the human skull or an animal skull, the real ones, if you want to go into the old ways of doing necromancy, it's much more spiritual. You are using a force, a vortex between the living and the dead. It's an article of pure death. And when you stare into the eyes, you're basically conjuring that spirit, or the type of spirits that you're working with. It doesn't matter what type of spirits, but you need to consecrate the skull. This is something that Christian Day did not talk on. When you take a skull, you have to consecrate it. You've got to place the appropriate seals and wardings and stuff on it. Basically, the hieroglyphs, if you will. Then you have to charge it and apply it into your system of magic. Once you've done that, then you can put as much blood on it as possible. The more blood you put on it, in this case, your own blood, this would be your link. It would be your Horcrux, your dark totem. Okay, in this case, it's a phylactery. It's a tool that is used to conjure the dead, to speak with the dead, to work with the dead. So, looking into the eyes of the skeleton, you'd want some kind of stone in there. I would recommend jade. Okay, jade is something that is like, say, let's go with the necromancer's jade. It's a green stone. You already know what that is.
Yeah.
So you'd want to put those in there. this sends a link. It's more like a spiritual conduit. So you're conjuring the essence of death through that. And if you go into the realm of the dead, Sorceress Cagliostro actually discusses this in great detail in her book, the Blood Sorcery Bible, Volume 1. It's using your own blood strengthens that link. But once you've wiped your blood off, it closes that door. So you're opening the door, you're opening the vortex, and you're going into another dimension. In this case, you can go into hell, Hades, Sheol, Gehenna, whatever version of hell or spirit realm of the dead that you want to go to. That's how you do it.
Okay. Now there is a lot of talk when you start studying necromancy, and where from time to time the authors will mention something about taking the femur bone from the body, sharpening it, making it an athame.
Yep.
Now, can you go ahead and explain that and what the purpose of that is? Well, and how it differentiates between using a regular athame?
Well, if you look at the femur, number one, it's the largest bone in the human body. Okay, it's the largest bone. The femur holds a lot of different things that it can do. You can make it into a wand. You can make it into an athame. On one end, you can make like a little hook so it, hangs from your belt. So if you're doing rituals on the go, let's say, for example, you're going to a cemetery, or you're going to a mortuary or someplace that you're performing some kind of rite, you're able to you can hook it right to your belt loop. If you have a good, strong, sturdy belt that you can use. In this case, you can utilize, say, vials of blood and all that stuff, gris bags, mojo bags, or whatever. Make it more compact. Your athame hooks right onto the same belt. Now, if we go back to the 16th century, there's a little thing called the spirit's tooth. Okay, this is a shark's tooth. Okay, and what they used to do, the necromancers of old, is they would take the femur, file it down, make that little slit at the end, where the big, little stick out bone section is. And they would place that spirit, that tooth right in there and make it into an athame. Now, if you don't have the energy to do that, you could always just file it down into a point and use it as an athame itself. As long as it's able to cut through flesh and bone, as long as it's able to draw blood from you or sacrifice or whatever, it's all good. But they would wrap like a vine or something around it and to hold it all in place. It would be like a leather type rope.
Yeah.
And this becomes a tool that you are able to use for your tools and conjurations, energy manipulations, and just about everything else.
Okay. Now, what other body parts would you say are commonly known to take from the body and use in rites, besides the femur? That's very common.
You can use the bones of the hands. You can use the ribs, the skull.
Excuse me. Speaking of the hands, there's a common practice of going to a corpse, digging it up, taking the hand of somebody and putting to use
a murderer.
Usually people tend to grab the hand of a thief, do certain things. Can you go ahead and explain that and purpose?
Well, there's a couple of common misceptions, different things that you can do here. As you pointed out, the hand of a thief or a murderer, right? It's the left hand, and you can place this in wax, place matchsticks and everything in the fingernail, where the fingernails is, put it right into the fingers. You can add symbols such as astrology, planetary, and it becomes what is known as a hand of glory. And this is something that allows you to work with death. It's a spell that helps you, as long as it's burning, you're able to transcend into the realm of the dead and commune within astral forms.
Mhm.
Now, outside of that, the bones of the hands, you've heard of bone casting, forms of
Yep.
divination.
Yep.
These are old school methods, everything from the Norse to the Anglo-Saxons, the old, the Hexa. They've all used these things, even the Sutekh, the Ashi, the Ashin, you know, all of these practitioners have used the bones for divination purposes. So those are the two main reasons you want to take the bones. Outside of that, you can take the different aspects of the bodies, be it animals. If you got you come across an animal corpse, a carcass, take the hip joints, take the blood if you're able to, take the ribs and everything like that, and just you can bring them into your ritual room, and it empowers your rites and rituals. But they all have different meanings behind them.
Mhm.
Some can be used for curses and hexes. Others can be used for energy transference. Others can be used for, how should I say this? To make your connection to the dead much more satisfying.
Okay. All
So,
right. Now, you had mentioned before in one of your videos about zombie powder. Can you go ahead and explain what zombie powder is and its significance?
um, there's different methods of making it, but there's three main ingredients for it that every practitioner has. Okay. There is the puffer fish. It's basically a gallbladder. It's very toxic, if you will, and it's poisonous. So you want to use that with the poisons of tree frogs and that of the hallucinogenic properties of bullfrogs. Okay, these are the three main ingredients to zombie powder. Everything else is unique to the individual practitioner. Now, this type of powder can be slipped into your food or your drink. It could be used to, you can even touch it and then you end up putting it on yourself. Because a lot of times, we go around and you don't really pay attention and observe what you're touching. This is basically to bring you into, well, let's just call it a mute state. Remember, we were talking about the zombie aspect. Okay? When you look at a corpse, the eyes are open. It's like they're sleeping, basically, but with their eyes open. People will believe that you are dead. Your heart rate is so low that you don't even know you're alive. People can't even tell if you're dead or alive. So they bury you. After that's done, the Bokor will go over, bring you out, and bring you back with a different powder, a different substance. And you literally believe that you are a zombie, that they've brought you back from the dead. But what it is it's more a controlling agent.
It's a controlling mechanism where the person is actually on autopilot. Is what's happening.
Basically, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And it's interesting that there also seems to be uh, mentioning of necromancy in the Bible. Take, for instance, the Witch of Endor, when Jesus resurrected Lazarus and the centurion's daughter. Would you say basically Jesus was a necromancer?
He was, hands down. He was a
Oh,
practitioner of the
yeah.
dark arts. Even I can tell that. And you look at what he's done. I mean, just from the four books that they put in there. And he
Yeah.
controlled the weather, elemental magic. He is able to read people's minds and know what they're thinking. That's a mediumship. That's being a reader and everything. He brought people back from the dead, and he performed miracles that were basically considered to be supernatural. Therefore, the Pharisees believed him to be the child of Beelzebub, basically, you know, and when in reality he was just practicing the arcane.
Exactly. I do see a similarity in the story of Moses, whereas he was raised in Pharaoh's palace, but he was raised by the magicians and taught by them, you
Yep.
know, and the priests, and so he was taught. Moses himself was taught the top-notch magic of the day, you know, and then he decides to go against Pharaoh and use that magic.
And
you know,
you look
for
at what he carried with him, a scepter, basically, you know, a
That's
staff,
right.
a scepter. That's a tool of necromancy. That is a tool of black magic and sorcery.
Okay. Well, looks like I've covered all the points I wanted to. Oh, one more thing I wanted to speak on is in the Bible, the Witch of Endor. You know, for those who may not be familiar with it, you know, she happens to go and bring up the spirit of the prophet Samuel. Now, I know that a lot of witches and necromancers tend to look up to the Witch of Endor. Why would you say that is? What is it about that story that people tend to miss and doesn't get talked about?
Well, when we look at this story, we know that it was King Saul who went to her because at the time he was in the middle of a 40-year war with the Philistines, you know, the land of giants. And at the time, there was also these laws against practicing witchcraft. So when he went to her under the cloak of darkness, she looked at him and said, "Hey, you know, why are you trying to ensnare me, basically?" And after they talked, she used blood sorcery, which is hemomancy. She used a corpse, you know, the lick and the glick aspect of a cadaver to summon through reanimation of that spirit. She basically guided the spirit of Emmanuel to that corpse that she was working with at the time. A lot of people, when they go over this story, they don't connect necromancy to what she is because they refer to her as a witch, not a necromancer. Whereas in other parts of the Bible, it literally talks about you staying away from diviners, necromancers, warlocks, and witches, and all that other stuff. They don't always classify each type of practitioner. They always clump them right into one. So in this case, the Witch of Endor wasn't just a witch, she was also a necromancer and a blood sorceress. And she was way ahead of her time.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Well, it's been a very, very interesting discussion. What can we expect from you in the future?
Well, I'm actually getting ready to work with Santa Morte on a series, and I'm going to be working with necromancy with her, and I'm going to be posting this on my channel, my YouTube channel, my Facebook channel, and I've also got an Instagram, Timber, and a MeWe account as well, not just a TikTok. And I'm going to be kind of discussing a lot of what I'm working with and what's going on. I started working with her last month, so there's already some progress there of being led into different traditions. Over the last few months, I've been working with Brujeria practices, specifically the practice of necromancy, and working with El Diablo, okay, which is basically the devil, okay. So working with both of these and the spirits I'm currently working with is just adding on to what I'm doing through the Warlock series. But this particular series is getting ready to shift into the workings of Saint Death herself. So I'm definitely looking forward to going into that series, and hopefully everybody enjoys it like they've enjoyed the Warlock series. So that's what I've got planned right now.
Now, I want to note to everybody who's listening that if you'd like to hear more from Michael Hyson on the Dark Sorcery channel, he does have a playlist where he has about 52 videos where you can just scroll through. It's just endless amount of knowledge from all kinds of occult topics. And it's just, I encourage everybody to check that out. I also encourage people to go to his YouTube channel and check out his videos there. I will go ahead and put below this video all the links, all your social media links to your YouTube channel and so forth. But Michael, it's good talking with you. Great to have you on the channel, and I enjoy talking with you very much.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's been too long.
It's been way too long. We'll have to do this again sometime.
I concur.
Yes, yes. Okay, well, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Go ahead and subscribe to Dark Sorcery, and we'll see you next time.